This is kind of a rare book, and I might have shared it with you before because I like it so much, but it's by a professor named Alex Sosler. Alex has a book on aesthetics. He happens to be an Anglican priest, but he's on staff at Montreat College, which is in North Carolina, Montreat, an evangelical Christian college. And he wrote a book for first year students. Now, I'll just say as a caveat that it's written presuming that students are going to a Christian college, like your Calvins or your Wheatons or your Gordons or Taylor. But having said that, I think this book is great for undergrads of any source starting in the fall to wonder, why are you in college in the first place? The book is called Learning to Love. Have we talked about this before? It's called Learning to Love. The subtitle is Christian Higher Education as a Pilgrimage. Well, if you're a person of faith, then you are in Christian higher education, if you will. So granted, it was written for Montreat, but I think it's good for anybody. And what this book does, it develops sort of a fictional device of a student going off to classes. And with some advisement from some older mentors, he chooses what classes to take, meets up different professors, and the professors guide him on this pilgrimage, if you will, a John Bunyan kind of story. And he goes to these different colleges, as he calls them, and he meets different perspectives, if you will. The first one is the College for Thinkers, and that's in the city of big brains. And then he goes to the College for Workers, where the main place there is you're trying to just create a job so you can be successful. And then there's a critics of all that, and they value authenticity, just being yourself, And so he has these three different sort of models of education that you might find at a Christian college, even certainly there at Madison. You're going to find people that are all about just the success of your academic career, your brainiacs. You're going to find people that want successful for the workforce. You just want to get something on your resume so you can get a good job someday. And then there's people that just want to be true to themselves and be authentic and creative and express whatever. All of those don't seem to have biblical norms that shape the process of higher learning. So he contrasts that, where the pilgrim ends up at a college for lovers, where you learn to love stuff. You learn to care about the stuff God cares about. You learn to care about stuff in the right way. St. Augustine said that the main problem with our sin is that it disorders our loves. We love the wrong things, or we love good things in the wrong way. And so it's about priorities and love and shape and order to your life. And he says that's really what college can do. It can help you love well, love God, love others, love your career, love creation. And then that's the sort of a rest stop after that. So he's sort of critiqued wrong views of education, invited you to this pilgrimage of love, and then says after a rest stop, which is itself a great chapter, he says learning is a gift. And so God's grace is the foundation for learning. Then learning to love is a posture, and he calls that charity, the virtue of charity. And then you begin to learn to belong to something, to someone, and to someone, a guild. You love as a motive for education itself. You love as a practice. That's about wisdom. You love in community, and you're learning to love even the broken places because your education is going to equip you to serve God's needy world. And so in community with others, you make a difference. So it walks you through this sort of learning to commit to the right kind of stuff in the right kind of way, driven by charity, by love, by virtue. There is no other book that's as fun and interesting and curious, because it's written so cleverly, that is actually remarkably profound. Studying Jamie Smith, studying Wendell Berry. I mean, the citations and stuff, you can tell this Alex Sosler has done some good philosophical work. But it ends up being a really fun book about the purpose of college, and it's kind of different and almost whimsical at times. It's a really good read, and so it's about the power of love in the classroom. I love it. I think if you're a teacher, you need to understand what it means to teach like that. So even though you may be a devout Christian and I've got a PhD in mathematics or computer science or political theory, are you helping your students step into that as a process of their becoming an ordered lover of God's world? And so even if professors read this sort of lighthearted book about learning and the different models of learning as they pilgrimage through the settings of higher education, I think it would be good for professors. But certainly if you're a young student trying to figure what's it all about, it's a great little read. I wanted to start with that one. Now, here's a second one that I'm going to put right on the heels of that. This isn't about higher education as such, but it sort of just follows that if you love stuff, if you're curious, if you have the Christian mind, if you're thinking as you do at Upper House, inviting students to have an integral perspective relating their faith and their scholarship, once you're doing that, you have to learn the art of asking good questions. Learning is so much about curiosity and receiving God's word as a gift and God's insight in his creation as a gift. But that means exploring some stuff, including what's wrong with the world, because we live in a fallen world. So we study God's ordinances in the world, but we also study how messed up it is. It can be heartbreaking. And so learning how to probe all that in relationship with others, whether it's faculty, whether it's classmates, whether it's seekers or Christians that don't understand your passion, or non-believers, no matter who you're interacting with, you got to learn this skill set of being a good listener to answers, and they're provoked by asking good questions. So the book is new. It is called The Art of Asking Better Questions. It's by a pastor down in Philly named J.R. Briggs. He's got this missional energy. I like J.R. a lot. Listen to the subtitle: Pursuing Stronger Relationships, Healthier Leadership, and Deeper Faith. So in your relationships, in your leadership capacities as a leader on campus, and even in your own faith life, as you begin to ask God questions or listen to the questions God asked us. There's an appendix in the bottom about how Jesus' style of mentoring people was often asking questions. There's hundreds of questions that Jesus himself asked in the Gospels. So this sort of takes that as an inspiration and just says, what if the key to a deeper life, to a more meaningful learning experience in college and beyond, lies in the questions that you ask? So I thought those two might be good starters for students, learning to love well in higher education and learning to ask good questions on campus.